Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is the amazing Glenn Sturm. He is a cancer thriver. He has an amazing background. Can you say hi, Glenn?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm glad that we connected. It's unbelievable, guys, that what he's been dealing with. He's was diagnosed with advanced T cell lymphoma for like 16 years ago, right, Glenn?
Yeah, well, it's February 21st, 2009. So I've been on
Okay.
chemo since then.
Wow. And is it every week or how often is it?
Well, I take chemo every day
Wow.
orally, and then I have IV chemo, and now it's every 4 weeks. It started out 3 days of chemo every 3 weeks.
And do they know what, I always very curious what caused this? Do they know what caused your
I mean, it's purely speculative, but in all likelihood, it's a chemical agent of some type that caused it. It's environmental issues, like most cancers are.
right? So you were in the military as well, as my understanding. So how long were you in the military?
Well, I spent 4 years on active duty and then an additional 33 years in the reserves as an officer. So a
For
total of 37 years commissioned service.
for the Army, correct?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
So you have been through a lot, and I think I love talking to thrivers like you because we learn so much. You have a lot of good support, and you have a lot of, I think, a positive approach to life. I think that helps mentally. It helped me. I'm assuming it helped you. My issue was different than yours. I guess you have to go my understanding is you have a cancer team now as well. And is that,
Well, yeah, I started with my own team that I created myself because back in the days when I was initially diagnosed, and maybe when you were, the thought of a cancer team didn't exist yet. So I put my own team together with the help of a doctor because of another medical issue I had. And it's been amazing what's happened and what I've learned about teams and the use of teams.
I think there's also a lot of, right, you have those different perspectives as well. That helps you think outside the box, maybe.
I think so. I'm actually writing papers and things on it right now because I don't think people are getting enough information. We just finalized what we think the complete list for a team is, the exhaustive list per team, and it's 46 professionals. And the average person may only use five of them, but there are four or five that almost everybody should have access to, and it changes everything when you have those folks. If you want me to go into it, I explain
Oh,
that. But
yeah. Who are the 4 to 5 that you need at a minimum?
well, you get your principal oncologist is the first one, but the second one, I think the most important one is a psychiatrist. And so let me explain why I got to that. When I got diagnosed, it was a shock that it came. And at the same time that happened, my dog died, my mentor died, my dad was terminal, and I got served with divorce papers. So
Mm.
my GP said, Glenn, I think you need to have a psychiatrist. And I said, well, whatever. I mean, I'm a successful lawyer, chairman of the law firm and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if I need that, but whatever. I respect him, so I did it. And when you start having side effects from the chemo, I mean, the first one that most people get is being tired. Well, it was pretty aggressively tired, called cancer fatigue syndrome now. And at the time, and even today, a lot of organizations say that if you have that problem, what you should do is exercise a little bit more. Well, I was running marathons, so I didn't think I could do that. And then get more rest. And I said, well, between chemo and working my tail off, I can't afford to sleep as much as I'm sleeping. And so my psychiatrist, you know, I started talking to her about it, and we ran a bunch of tests and things. It turned out that my tiredness had turned not only that, it had gone to the point that it was narcolepsy. So they put me on a drug that counteracts narcolepsy, and it gave me my energy back, and the sleeping and tiredness went away. And then for years, people jokingly called me Taz because I had the attention span of an adolescent fruit fly, and I was having a hard time focusing on some of the things I was working on. So they did a bunch of tests on that, and I had ADD. Well, when you take the combination of the ADD meds and the narcolepsy meds, it solves the chemo brain or CRCI issues, and it causes the cancer. In my case, it's solved the cancer fatigue syndrome issues. So I went back to a normal energy level and a normal concentration and cognitive level for me, and that changed everything. Well, so she was the second person on my team, and if you look at it, the drugs that we're talking about are best prescribed by a psychiatrist because it's in their area of expertise. And that's my second person that I had on my team. Then the third person was I had a really bad bike accident in my first year, crushed a collarbone, had a bunch of other things that messed up. And so I had to have physical therapy. Well, the physical therapy changed everything. I started doing Pilates and everything else. And my insurance company was shocked. I tell people this and nobody can believe it. They ended up approving 4 to 5 days a week for 10 years of physical therapy. And she was more than a physical therapist, but she was an exercise physiologist. And, this was all while I was living in Atlanta, and it just changed everything. So I had those people, then I had an acupuncturist, and it turned out that I was my own navigator or guide. So those are probably the 3 or 4 of the most important people that you need to have. You also probably have a surgeon of some type and a radiologist maybe, but nothing else to read the imaging. And those are probably the principal people you need. But how wide does the list go? It's kind of insane how big it gets. But it includes music therapists, palliative care specialists, and everything else. And most people aren't going to need all those things. But if you need it, you need to have an organization that has access to those things for you. And in my thing I'm getting ready to post on it, it says if you're not being diagnosed and worked with by a fully integrated multidisciplinary cancer care team, that you need to find an organization that has that for you, because the statistics that show the survival rate for people with those teams versus the other approaches are just kind of staggering. The general rule of thumb now is there's just with those teams and that approach, there's overall an average 70% reduction in mortality rates.
Wow.
Which is just a staggering number. And so that's the reason I'm writing about it, because it's so important. My first novel was finished, and I had to stop the publishing process for it to get this book ready. So it'll be out in April.
What's the title of your upcoming book? Well, it doesn't have to be the final title, but what do you expect?
Well, this is the working title.
Okay.
It's I don't know if you can see it, but
More Than Hope.
More Than Hope: The Compelling Promise of Integrated Multidisciplinary Cancer Care Teams. It cites everything. I mean, it's unbelievable how much I'm having to do on the footnotes just to make sure that everything in it is backed up by research sources that are peer reviewed.
Right.
And because I'm not a doctor, and that gets to the next point I want to make about it. When anybody reads this, if they read it and they think I'm missing something, either by overstating something or not stating something that needs to be stated, please contact me. And the website is we'll go through it again but in a minute, but it's my first name at my last name.com, GlennSturm.com. And that's the website. Just send me a note there. I'll respond very quickly, because getting this right is very, very important to me. But it's being reviewed by medical physicians and specialists right now. The first thing we're putting out is just the list of all the specialties you might need for this whole process. It's 46 potential professionals, which is just it's just insane. I'm going to pull that up, and it's like, would you ever expect that you would have to have 46 professionals? So to give you a couple of the ones that are fun, the most interesting one to me is there's a new specialist now called a multidiscipline team coordinator. Okay, that's the person, because they don't use tumor boards anymore. They use multidisciplinary meetings, which all the professionals get together to review something, and they do it by consensus, which means you've got to have a coordinator to put the information together. Then you need a clinical trials coordinator and a tumor registrar to to do this. And these are just the administrative people that go with this. But the comprehensive nature of the way it's done is amazing. But the fun ones are oncology massage, yoga and meditation, music therapy, and then physical therapists, sports physiologists. Things you wouldn't think about, though, are I'll give you an example of what happened to me. Early in my chemo treatment, I had liver failure. My AST and ALT levels were doubling every 3 weeks. And so they get me with a liver doctor. And as it continued to increase, they put me on a liver transplant list and they couldn't diagnose it. They couldn't figure out what the problem was. And so, I'm sitting there saying, I've got, advanced, cancer. Are they really going to give somebody with advanced cancer a liver? I said, I don't think they will. They said they would, but I just said, I don't think so. So I said, I've got to solve this problem. What's causing this? So what I did was I went back and looked at all the changes in my life over the preceding 2 years, workout schedules, work schedules, sleep routines, all the medicines that I'd taken or had changed. And then I did correlation coefficients to see what correlated with the onset of the disease, liver failure, and any of those changes. Well, it turned out that the correlation coefficient with a drug that they had put me on, they took me off a leave for a pain medicine and put me on a different drug. And it turned out that the correlation coefficient for that was 0.96 or 96% correlated. So I go back to Yale and I said, I think I've solved the problem. And the doctors kind of laughed at me and said, well, Glenn, correlation doesn't equal causation. And I just said, okay, well, I was kind of offended by that. Took it too personally. And I said, well, guess what? I'm not going to take that drug anymore. We'll see if there's any causation. Well, 3 weeks later, the AST and ALT levels had not gone up anymore. 3 weeks after that, they had started to go down. And 3 weeks after that, they were back to normal. And so I said to the docs, I guess we found the causation, haven't we?
But everybody's different, right? Everybody's bodies are different. Right?
Well, yeah, but the thing about it is I could do the math for that, but how many people could do the math for correlation coefficients? I mean, really few. So it turns out that I added to the list of specialists is a neurologist, and that is because all those people do math.
Yes.
Extraordinary levels, and they can do correlation coefficients like it's no big deal. Now, that's the reason I added them. But that's the point is you might not need that person, but if you have a big issue like an onset of a disease that you've never thought of, be fine. Well, the other big one I had 5 detached retinas in my left eye and a torn retina in my right eye. And it happened 30 days after I went on a new drug, and then they fixed that one. And then 30 days later, I had another detached in the left eye, and then 45 days after that, I went through 5 of these. Well, it turns out it was the new chemo agent interacting with some other things caused an ocular event.
Oh, wow.
So it turns out that 5% of people on systemic chemo, and maybe as high as 10%, will have an ocular event or a series of them. Well, you need a radiation oncologist in order to figure that out. And I mean, when you start looking at the complexity of these interactions and how many medicines people are on, I joke about it, but I think I'm on 30 prescriptions right now. Of course there are going to be interactions. And then the next issue that comes up is when you've got those kinds of things and you're traveling, let's say you have a problem, you're in a car wreck or in a bike wreck or something like that. How does the treating doctor know at an emergency room what medicines you're on and what they should give you that won't kill you?
Right.
Okay, well, I almost died last year because of a multi-factor drug interaction problem.
Wow.
That should have been prevented, but that's a different issue. But I mean, I wear a road ID. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Are you familiar with road IDs?
Yes, I have.
It's a little, yeah. And so I wear that thing all the time. It's got a serial number on it and a website, and you can pull it up and see all my medical records and everything. And this is my local hospital here, put me on a drug that interacted with everything else and put me into a comatose state.
As you were talking, it made me think too, like an epidemiologist. That's probably something too. You probably I've seen. I saw
That's,
the,
I'm going to add that right now because that's a great idea.
yeah, an epidemiologist. That's what helped me. Yeah, look, see, got
I'm adding it this as we talk.
yeah, and the other thing that came to mind is what helped me was a nutritionist, someone they discovered that I had an allergy to dairy. That wasn't helping when you're dealing with cancer when they tell you to eat dairy. Not for
Well,
me.
well, I mean, a nutritionist is already there, but an epidemiologist is not. And
Yeah.
that is absolutely, I don't know how I missed that, and the doctors all missed that.
Well, there you go. You a cancer thriver myself, but that's what helped. I saw two different epidemiologists, one that was a holistic approach and one that was a traditional approach, right? And I should say traditional, but they helped me a lot.
But what you just did is what I'm looking for. So when this stuff comes out, I want people to look at it, and I'm putting it on right now because I'm circulating the semifinal list of the things. But I'm going to put it on because that makes all the sense in the world that you need to have access to this. Well, if you go in my hometown, Jackson, Wyoming, we have one um, oncologist, and there's nobody else that specializes in cancer treatment. Well, they do some nice things. They do have some of the massage functions and the acupuncture and things like that, but they don't have, for instance, a doctor of dentistry because of the side effects of chemo on the mouth and your dental things, which can cause incredible side effects if they're not addressed immediately. And so, you need a DMD there, and it just kind of goes on and on. And now, will you need all these people? No, but you need to have access to them, and you need to have a coordinator who will understand the problems that you're facing, who's trained in it and trained in the broad-based part. Because what's happened with the multidisciplinary teams is it is not in a tumor board. What happened was your principal doctor would come in front of a group of doctors and make a presentation about why they're treating you a certain way, but they made the decision. Well, in the multidisciplinary approach, it's a consensus-based approach. So you need to have all the disciplines available to help address issues. And you have to have a communications framework in place so that nobody's surprised. And I had that communications network because of my sports physiologist, physical therapist in Atlanta. She saw me every day, and my cancer would present itself in the skin a lot, and especially if it was getting bad. And every week she took a picture of my back and sent it to my doc. And every week she would send a note that says no changes, or Glenn's being a lot more tired. Glenn's, not as responsive. Glenn's not, didn't have the energy levels he had, whatever. Well, that communications loop is critical because the doctor doesn't see very often. If you're
Right.
lucky to see every 3 weeks. Well, if they're getting feedback and a continuous feedback loop, it is critical and it makes a huge difference. So you have to have a process of communication in place. And that's the navigator slash the coordinator who these things been. And I was recently asked about a breast cancer issue for a friend of mine. Their daughter had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer and she's 25. And where's the best hospital? So I did my research on it, and I couldn't find anything that really jumped out as, doing at the most cutting level on some of these things. And so I expanded the search a bit, and I found, I've never even been to this hospital. I don't know anything about them other than my research, but it's the breast cancer program at University of San Francisco. And their multidisciplinary approach looks like it's the real deal. And their performance reports are extraordinary. And it looks like they're getting the benefits they should get if they're doing a fully based multidisciplinary approach to cancer care. And so, I wrote it up and sent it to them. Well, they're lucky because their daughter lives about 20 miles from that. And that's where she is. So, but the point is that's what you have to do. And as I tell everybody, travel's expensive, and I get that. But the doctors are paid the same thing, no matter who you see. So, you're going to The insurance companies dictate that. And so why not get the best doctor in the world for your condition with the best type of practices at the hospital?
I like
So,
that. Yeah.
and so what I say in this whole thing at the end, there's a there's an introduction to this section of the book, and what I'm going to post, because I think it's too important to not have this out immediately. There's a section of it, an introduction uh, for new patients, and there's an introduction for new caregivers, and there's an introduction for hospitals. But at the end of all of them, they say the question is no longer whether integrated multidisciplinary care works. It works, and the results are breathtaking. The real question is whether your institution is providing it. If it isn't, and you are a patient or caregiver, who will your next institution or doctor be? And if you go to the hospitals, this is going to get published like this. So it says the real question is whether it's the right place here. If your institution is providing this service, if it isn't providing it at the highest quality, how are you going to fix this problem? If you can't fix the problem, where should you send your patients?
I like that. We have to find out how to fix it, not just throw a Band-Aid on it, right?
Right. It's got to be done at a high quality. And the people who are going to be fighting this are, I mean, like doctors are very independent and they're very smart. And the thought of going from a decision-making role to a, consensus role is going to be difficult for some of them. And I understand that. But, consensus does work. And the statistics are staggering on how much it has improved cancer care. In the Williams and Thompson research study on it, it said there's 100% of the studies in this topic have shown improvement for multidisciplinary and have shown that there's no improvement for silo-based care. And so, I mean, always be careful when you see somebody who says statistically something's 100% perfect in their results, because,
It's
there's been a
not.
lot of people who fake some things, but this is so, I mean, I've gone and read the reports from Australia and the EU reports and the techniques, and they've evolved over the past 20 years. The United States is really just getting into it, but it does work, and the best big hospitals are using it. And so when you're living in an environment like Atlanta, or any of the big cities, you should have access to this. The real issue gets to be if you live in a place like Jackson, Wyoming, how do you get access to the
Right.
full range of services?
That's true. I think this is so helpful to have this kind of conversation. We're, to me, kind of a similar mindset, being very curious. That's what's helped you, Glenn, as well. Your curiosity, that you're triggering that in other people, which it is very important. I just think we just need to talk more about this. I did not think about that, the integrated cancer team. I called it integrative health. That's kind of what I called it for myself. But I had so many different people, but I would walk away from doctors who wouldn't let me ask questions, right? Because like you said, some are in it and some won't be. But we just have to do what's the right thing for as a doctor. Their role is to help a patient get better.
And the other thing is it, some of us are wired to the point that we are positive about everything, and some of us have to learn to be positive. And I think I may have been in the latter group. But when I first got diagnosed, I spent a lot of time researching, because maybe it was just because of my curiosity. But I read an article by somebody who had died within 6 months of their diagnosis with my cancer. And the guy was so thankful about the time he'd had. And I said, 6 months? That's nothing. So I continued to read the article, and I read it several times. But he said that he was thankful because, unlike his friends who had died in Vietnam, or unlike his friends who had had a heart attack, been killed in a car wreck, he had had 6 months to fix things and do things better, and bring his life to a happy ending. And that really had a profound effect on me. So I put a bunch of things together that I try to do. One of my rules is that I try to put a smile on somebody's face every day, and then sometimes I challenge myself about that. But putting a smile on somebody's face every day is some of the best medicine you take. But my challenging ones are when you're on the phone with somebody in a call center who's had a rough day,
Right.
and how do you get them to laugh? How do you
Correct.
get them to smile? And you can hear it in the tone of their voice. So you work at that, and just do that. And the other one is a phrase that I love, and that is, we must all give up hope for a better yesterday. Okay, we can't change our diagnosis. I mean, we wish we could, but it's just a fact we have to live with. So how do you move forward in a positive manner? And to me, one of the most important things on that is, what can you be passionate about? Whether, I mean, my passion is about my grandson, probably most, but secondly, it's my writing and my photography. And then third, maybe it's golf. But, and I've had a +2 handicap until last year, which is, a pretty good game. And so and last year I had a spine tumor, which prevented me from playing my
Gosh,
golf club for 18 months.
you got a
Yeah.
really positive attitude, Glenn. And that's why I started this. The title of my podcast for my first book was called Real Things. Real Things Live. So help you focus on what's important, what matters. And then like it kind of sets you free, like the title of your first book, having that kind of it just like focus on what matters, right? And what my purpose, I was always a lover of running, and I had to get physical therapy again. I said, so the physical therapist that helped me the first time, she was a runner, so she got it. Like, because I couldn't do some of my stuff, and it made me so happy.
Well,
Right.
yeah. So I was a marathon runner and qualified and ran Boston, and then my knees are kind of shot. So I just started doing long distance bicycle races. And, but I think the endorphins that come from that, you know, kind of might help our attitudes,
I
because
think
it,
it
it
does.
changes.
I joke, I gotta go for a run. I'm gonna choke somebody. It's a joke that I say, but it's just something that that's why I have like nature's always been calming, and you find something that calms you down too. I think nature's is that for my medicine. How's that?
Well, I mean, again, I live in Jackson, Wyoming. I live 20 miles from the entrance to Grand Teton National Park and 43 miles from the entrance to Yellowstone. And so I
Wow.
do a lot of wildlife photography too. It's not what I'm known for, but um, and it's just, and one of the things about my photography that keeps the positive attitude is my astrophotography. I shoot eclipses all over the world, and I have a team that we do it. But 100% of the revenue for anything we sell for that goes to support children's health.
I love that.
And I don't take any money. And so uh, the young lady who started the Brain Cancer Foundation, um, they're having their annual fundraiser, and she talked to me recently, and I said, well, would you like one of my pictures to auction off? And she said, sure. So we're going to auction off a 4 foot by 6 foot, one of one. I don't make additional copies of the ones I sell. They're just ones of one. So they're the original.
Oh wow.
And we're going to auction that off. So the lowest anything sold for in the past, 18 months has been $25,000. And that was a smaller picture. So hopefully we can get her 100 grand for this. But again, won't let anybody pay my expenses. I won't let anybody do anything else. So people always will ask, why are you doing that? What motivates you to do that? Well, when I go to my infusion center at Yale, it's called Infusion 7, and I have to walk by the Children's Infusion Center to get to mine. And you see the young families with the moms and dads with their children, their babies, I mean, on chemo.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it tears you up, and, there but for the grace of God, right? Goes I, and that's the whole thing is how do you give back? How do you make the world a better place? And if you can figure out a way to do that, the cancer is not going to get you. I mean, you're going to win in the end.
That's right.
Um, and that's, anyway, that's the whole point.
I love that. And that's really right. You were set free of having cancer, helping so many other people, not focusing on business profit, and then that's has its place, but not with what we're doing or what you're doing.
No, well, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I could do it, and I don't expect other people to be that fortunate. But then there are the idiotic things that I'm trying to work politically, like travel expenses. How do you deduct travel expenses? Well, generally they're not deductible for
Right.
people with cancer. I mean, but I've been flying to Hartford, Connecticut to get a rental car to go to New Haven. I'm in my 18th year of continuous treatment now. Um, but so if you publish a book, guess what? All your travel expenses are now deductible for research. So stupid. That's a Supreme Court case. But think about that. So an author can deduct their expenses. A person who's fighting cancer doesn't deduct theirs.
Yeah.
So that's something that Congress should be able to solve, and we need to get that done in the next year or so.
Well, that's something I'm going to bring up. The American Cancer Society is here in Atlanta, and that's something they have these well, we've gone to talk to the legislator in the state, state of Georgia, but not in DC. But that's something I'm going to bring up to them, right? And why not? Rather than, I
Well,
think what they've been pushing here is just trying to increase the sales tax on cigarettes. Well, no, to me, that's not going to solve the problem, right? Not at all.
and if you think about the federal budget and just say people with chronic diseases can deduct their travel expenses to doctors that'll keep them alive, how could you oppose that?
I am going to, I'm glad we had this conversation. The one legislator that I had, his name is Johnny Isaacson. He died a couple years ago.
Yep.
I think it's ALS. He's not
Yes.
that far from where his office I forgot which city it was in.
He was
So
a great senator.
yeah, he was very good. I met him in person, talking to him. So I'm just trying to think who else. I'm going to start local like that, okay? Rather than,
Well, you've got some people who are running for Senate this year. You
uh-huh.
get a commitment from both of them, the Democrat
Yeah,
and the Republican, that they'll support that.
we got a lot of that going on. This is perfect conversation, Glenn. Just sparked that into my mind because you're right. I didn't know they wouldn't deduct travel expenses. That's silly. And
It's beyond.
yeah, I'm just trying to be using nice words, Glenn.
Yeah, silly is a great word, isn't it?
Yeah, silly's
That's
better than effed up.
that's a joke. I joke about it. I still open car doors and things like that. And I'm still single after in my 18th year being single. And when I go on a date or something, I always open a car door and I always buy the meals. And
Right.
it's just some women just kind of like, why are you doing that? And I said, because my mom's still watching me. And if I ever see her again, I don't want her chewing me out for not following what she had taught me.
Right.
And so, if you use the mom's rule, generally you'll be okay.
That's good. I think it's really a good idea. We just need to help everybody as much as we can. And I think you're right. We need to do this, like you said, the integrated cancer team. And I got the idea to reach out to the American Cancer Society to let's talk to these legislators. I mean, I can go directly to the legislators. We have
Well,
a mess in our healthcare system anyway.
well, just to give you on this, the fully integrated multidisciplinary team, the Williams and Thompson meta-analysis looked at 56,187 patients and, looked at them and put them into categories whether they were in a multidisciplinary environment or not. And guess what? There was 179 studies they studied, and they're the ones who came up with 100% on both sides.
Wow.
And then that article has been cited now by over 700 other peer-reviewed articles.
That's good.
So, I mean, this does work. But again, when we put this thing out, the epidemiologist I had not thought of, that, and by the way, nobody else had either. And I've done a lot of work on this. But it's like, that's how you make it right, is when you listen, you keep your ears open and you listen to people and they'll say, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And you can have pride of authorship, but no defense mechanisms about people trying to make suggestions.
Which
You
is
want suggestions.
Yes, you want to be open. We need to look at different perspectives. And my epidemiologist, by the way, was a professor at Emory University. I don't know if he's still doing that now, but I mean, he was at some point. But he's been really helpful.
I just looked up the definition of epidemiologists. They're basically disease detectives.
Yes, they are.
Oh boy, man, that's so needed. It's unbelievable. So if we're having somebody document everything, so we can look at trend and trend analysis. You want an epidemiologist involved just because they can put the data that's been compiled to use.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's such a good idea.
Right. Just like I mentioned, another doctor found out I had a dairy issue, and that was not helping my body fight cancer when my body's busy fighting eating dairy.
Well, it's there's so much of this is, I don't, I mean, I don't, I don't understand some of the things Kennedy's doing, but I'm celebrating the fact that we have somebody who's calling the question on stuff and asking questions.
Correct. We need to ask questions. That's why a lot of people, when they are having, like you mentioned, get a cancer diagnosis, are scared and they're afraid to ask questions. But I was not afraid, and that's just I think part of it is my goal was to make sure I was there for my sons. My sons were young at the time, and that was my beacon. I call it a
Yeah.
beacon of hope as well.
Well, it's like my grandson. I mean, so I'm getting ready to move again. I'm going to keep a place here, but it's not going to be my principal residence anymore. And the reason is my grandson. I've got one grandchild, and it doesn't look like we'll get any more. But he's my buddy, and recently my daughter and son-in-law told him that there's going to be a second house at the farm that we're buying, and that'll be my house. And I've got two golden retrievers. They're being very good this morning. But Sam has got a a dog called Sunny, but it's a Saint Bernard Doodle, and Sunny is her name, and just a great animal. And Sam looked at his mom and dad, said, "You mean that on the weekends when you and Dad are sleeping in, I can go get Sunny. We can go over see Grandpa with Sunny, and Sunny can play with Grandpa's two dogs, and I can play with Grandpa, and he can make me breakfast." And she said, "Yeah, he can do that for you." And he just said, "Yes." Yeah, clenched fists with both hands. He was so excited. Well, if you can't be passionate about that, something's wrong with you. And so, finding any kind of thing that'll give passion to you is going to help your progression in the disease and slowing it down.
It helps, definitely helps with the right mindset, and it helps bring out the joy and the positive. I think that is so important in life while we're still here, right, Glenn?
I'm still here. Well, here's the thing I'll give you one more statistic.
Okay.
Uh, on my disease, my daughter was told that I had basically, when I was initially diagnosed, so I had 2.5 years to live. And I never asked the question. I didn't, that's just kind of a question I know it's a guess and I don't like guesses like that. And so, you know, here I am, 18 years later. Am I under the new rules? The progression of my disease is that there's a 70% reduction in my mortality rates for people who are in the multidisciplinary with my disease. And my longevity is now 30 years from today.
Wow.
So it's 2.5 years, 18 years ago. And I put my own team together, which is a multidisciplinary team, and just like you did. And now guess what? My life expectancy is over 30 years. Well, that'll put me over 100, and that'll basically mean I'll have been on chemo for 50 years,
Gosh,
which might bankrupt an insurance company, but that's okay.
you're still here, Glenn. You have all this wisdom, and that's why I think wisdom, especially that's probably why your grandson and you connect. You're sharing wisdom with each other, right? Right, he has it too. So it doesn't matter how old he is.
Okay, so I brought this up yesterday on a call, and I said to somebody, and I said, "How do children spell love?" It's a really important concept. How do they spell love? It's not Time. No, excuse me. It's not love. It's Time. It's not quality time. It's quantity.
Yes,
All they want is to be around you,
yes,
and they will help you celebrate life. And that's what we should all be doing every day. And the more we can celebrate life with our families and celebrate every day, the longer we're going to live, the better we're going to live. It's just, going to be wonderful.
This
So it's a great phrase. I learned that on an airplane by a gentleman who sat next to me. He said, "How do children spell love?" It's Time.
That is a great thing. You should definitely put that out there as a poster or something. It's so beautiful. I just love your perspective, Glenn. I like your curiosity and you're bringing joy. I'm feeling joy right now. And you're making me think of things that I never thought of before, right? And that's why we have to have these kind of conversations.
That's it. I mean, epidemiologists, I cannot believe we've got multidisciplinary coordinators, we've got clinical trials coordinators, a research nurse, we've got a tumor registrar, and our cancer database manager. Well, you do all this stuff, and who's going to put the information to use if you don't have an epidemiologist?
Correct. They will find a path.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is I mean, that's okay. That's the reason it's so important. I tell everybody, I'm not a doctor. I mean, the people who've read this, who know what they're talking about, I think they know what they're talking about. I hope they do. Say that they've never seen anybody who's done the amount of research I've done to try to get a comprehensive list. And a lot of it might take a big hospital to have all these people, but they don't have to all work for the hospital, if that makes sense.
Right.
But we
Right.
need to find ways to get. I mean, my oncologist would write letters to the insurance company that they needed to pay for the physical therapy and the benefits I was having. I mean, and that makes a big difference because it's kind of hard for the insurance companies to turn down a doctor who's written a letter on behalf of the patient.
Right. Specific information.
And if they do, that gives you the ability to go to the state insurance commissioners and say, look, the doctor says I need this, but they won't pay for it. Why?
Right. Yes, we need to enlighten these politicians too. So in a
And
nice
we
way.
have a roundtable with them and just say, look, I mean,
I'm feeling it in my heart right now. This is so beautiful, Glenn. Where can people learn more about you?
well, my website is glennsturm.com, GLENNSTURM.com. And that's the landing pad for this. There is going to be a new website, but it'll be posted there. There'll be a link to it. That website, you'll see my books, all of them. I've got 7 now, and I've got their videos that have been done about my work and things that are on there. We are going to have a landing place for all of the interviews that I've had. I'm not going to do my own separately because I want to support others. And, I don't get paid anything to do these, and nor do I want to be. So it's Glenn, Sturm, STURM.com. And if you find something that's off, just add info at that. Just say, please notify Glenn immediately of this issue. They're all people who review this every day are trained to give me that information immediately. I don't know if you sensed it, but I've already, while I've been on the call, I've added the epidemiologist. I've added the reasons why for it in the list of who the team should be. And that's how it doesn't take any time to fix things. Missions need to be fixed. And if there's something that people don't agree with the accuracy of it, that really needs to be fixed. So please, please do not be quiet with your criticism or your ideas.
I love this. I love what you're doing. And you're on a mission, Glenn, to help solve this for everybody in the future.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you again for your time. And thanks for everybody that's listening.
Well, thank you.
Have a
Thank you
great
for
day.